Thank you guys for being here. Welcome. I'm going to introduce our panelists this evening. We have Tanya Campbell, who has a master's in criminal justice and works as a senior crime victim advocate at the Crime Victim Advocate Program under Relationship Violence Services. Next, over in the purple, we have Drew Holling, who is the SARC director, which stands for the Student Advocacy Resource Center at the University of Montana, and this provides resources and support for students who experience assault, bullying, intimidation, or discrimination. Patty Murphy works here at the YWCA and is the director of programs here. And then closest to me is Connie. Connie MacDonald is the program manager for the YWCA Pathways program, which offers shelter and counseling and support for survivors of domestic and sexual violence. So I kind of just have a bunch of questions and topics that we might be able to cover, and then if anybody, I'll open it up to the room at the end to see if anybody has any additional questions they want to throw in. But first, I guess maybe you guys could talk a little bit about what each of your programs do and how they support survivors and people who come to you.
You want me to start?
Sure.
Okay. So through the Pathways program, we have a 24-hour crisis line that is staffed by some staff, but mostly volunteers, and we're always looking for more volunteers. It's a first call for anybody really who is experiencing domestic violence or sexual assault, or who may know somebody who is experiencing domestic violence or sexual assault. We have shelter residents who will sometimes just call at some time during the evening or the middle of the night just because they need somebody to talk to. We have other people who will call with questions because they need to run something by somebody, because maybe they've seen something, or maybe they're watching their neighbor or a friend or a loved one, and they think that it might be things that aren't healthy, but they're just not sure. So it's a really good first start for somebody when you just have questions or you don't know where else to go. And then we can direct you in the best services or the referrals that will provide you with the best support. We also have a walk-in crisis counseling room that's open at the Y, this office, 5 afternoons a week from noon to 4, noon to 5 on Fridays. And it's kind of our first call at the Y. If you come in there and it's the same type of thing. You just need somebody to run something by, or you're in crisis. We have volunteers who work the walk-in room who can, direct you in the direction that you need to go, give you referrals to the people who are able to provide you with advocacy. And also, if you're at a place where you need shelter, then we'll help you walk through that process and let you know if we have shelter available. And then we have our shelter, which is 7 bedrooms, which for a community this size is really, really, really small. We are full 95% of the time, and if we have a lull of a couple of days when we might have a room available, it fills up really quickly. Our maximum stay is 60 days, but that's not written in stone. Most women come and go probably in less than the 60 days. During the time that they're at shelter, we provide, basically try to meet their needs, whatever those happen to be. We will try to connect them with housing referrals. We will advocate for them with community agencies. We will connect them with mental or physical health agencies. We will help them get their kids enrolled in school. We will provide parenting support. Like I said, basically just meeting any of their needs, whatever those needs might happen to be. And we do a lot of one-on-one with women who come into the shelter, along with their kids. We have children assigned just as children's advocates to meet with those children and provide those same type of resources. A big part of it is trying to help them understand that they aren't alone, that all these other women are in basically the same situation. And even though everybody's story is different, everybody's story is actually very similar also. What am I forgetting? Oh, we also have support group, which is open to all of our residents and anybody in the community, and we have a support group for women and a support group for children. It's a great place to start for somebody who may not want to jump in and really have a conversation with somebody. You come to the first support group, and we have 2 that you can filter into after that. We have dinner first, so there's a social aspect which helps people kind of meet and greet and feel comfortable before they go into support group. That's every Tuesday night. Am I forgetting anything?
No, I think you
Okay.
covered it. Yes.
So at the Student Advocacy Resource Center at the University of Montana, we're also called SARC, we provide a number of services kind of similar to the YWCA. So we provide advocacy services, and that can include helping to connect clients to resources, maybe like the YWCA or the CVA, as well as doing academic advocacy. So many times our clients, of course, are students, and so we're helping them to either talk to professors, get notes for classes, sort of help ease that, because our main goal is to help empower students so that they can stay in school and not be impacted further. We can also help with reporting advocacy, so we can help connect students to reporting to law enforcement. And then at the university, we also have a separate reporting option, which is what's called Title IX. So we work closely with our Title IX office and can help refer students there. We can provide advocacy services as they're reporting to that office. And so that's another option students have. And then we do a lot of medical advocacy as well. So we're part of the Curry Health Center, so we can help connect students if they need medical attention at our health center. Or we do a lot of advocacy work through First Step, which is a real gift that Missoula has such an amazing clinic. First Step provides medical care to victims of sexual assault or survivors of sexual assault. And so our advocates, along with YWCA advocates, respond 24/7 to provide crisis intervention, support, connection to services, and follow-up. The other main thing that SARC does is I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor, and so I oversee a counseling clinic within SARC, and so we provide counseling services to all of our clients if they're interested. All of those services are free and, of course, confidential. So that's a really wonderful thing that we're able to offer our students. And then, of course, we do a lot of prevention work as well. One of our big focuses is on bystander intervention. And so next week we'll be training around 2,000 plus students in how to intervene, really focusing on sexual assault, but also in domestic violence, relationship violence situations. We'll be going through those trainings and having a social justice fair. So a big part of our mission is also fully preventing violence from occurring. We also have a hotline as well, so students can call and ask questions anonymously. They can come to our office at any time, 9 to 4, Monday through Friday, and speak with one of us. And yeah, that's, I think, us.
So I'm with the Crime Victim Advocate Program, and we do a lot of the same things with the exception that we are court advocates. So we have advocates who are what we call civil advocates, and they're advocates who help people in the court system getting orders of protection. And then we also have what I do, which I'm a criminal advocate, so when criminal charges are filed, then I work with the victim or survivor throughout the process of interviewing with law enforcement or prosecutors or defense attorneys, trial preparation, those kinds of things. But we are an empowerment program, so you can come and talk to us or and find out what the options are. And it doesn't mean that there'll be a police report or that anyone else gets involved. It might be just checking out what your options are And I think all three of our programs are empowerment. So basically, it's really active listening to try and get a sense of what is needed in whatever the person is saying their situation is, and then following through with that.
Great. So I guess, what does a typical survivor look like if someone is coming in to see you? What is it that they will typically need or have lost or have been disempowered by that they'll that you find yourself kind of providing right away? I don't know. It doesn't have to be in order, but.
I mean, I think for pathways, I can't see there really is a typical, survivor. It kind of depends on, how long somebody has been in this particular relationship. For some women who may be at that place where they don't really recognize that it's an unhealthy relationship, it may just be being believed is one of the biggest things that they need when they first get there. Knowing that there are options, helping them recognize their strengths, helping them recognize how much they've already accomplished and all the things that they do achieve every single day, even though, they may be being told from their partner that they're failing and that they're not capable, that they're not worthy, that they don't have any value, helping them recognize that value. For the women that come in with kids, it's a big part about making sure that their kids' needs are met and reassuring them that their kids will be safe and that there'll be somebody there to listen to them and talk to them and answer their questions. I don't know if that answers the question, Ari, but it's not really, it's different, I think, for every single person that comes in. And we try very hard to make sure that we, in that first initial conversation, that we find out, what their goals are and what their needs are, because we want it to be participant-led. And we, want them to understand that if they go back 15 times, we're going to be there 15 times to support them.
I just want to note that anybody can be a victim. So a victim can be of any age, race, culture, education level, marital status, employment. So
Gender.
Yeah, it's not choosy. It happens to everyone. I think that's really important to remember.
I think at SARC, a lot of times what we tend to see is maybe students asking or coming to us to talk about, what's a healthy relationship, what's an unhealthy relationship, kind of engaging in some of those conversations, getting some more information about what's okay, how to set boundaries, just getting some basic information. And so a lot of what we do maybe at first is providing resources and, and kind of having those conversations with people of like, what's a healthy relationship to you? What does that mean? What does that look like? Like Connie said, really trying to empower them. I always believe my clients are the experts in their own lives, so they know what's the best thing for them, and my job is to be a support person. I'm going to be there for them 100%, no matter what decisions that they make, and just be there to provide that resource and support. And like Connie said, if they return to the relationship, I'm still here, and they can come back and talk to me as many times as they want or need to, and that is very important. I would agree with that.
And I would say with the Crime Victim Advocate Program, for the orders of protection, it is, people are seeking out what to do when they have fear of someone in their life. And so they'll access us to see what that looks like and try to get this person to stop either bothering them or coming around or check out what the options are. With the criminal side, it's different than all three in that I reach out to them. There's been a charge made against someone who has harmed them in some way, and so I reach out to them. It's not a walk-in as far as that goes. I don't always have, great contact information, so sometimes I don't make contact, but we really try hard to make contact, to inform them about what's going to go on, try to get a sense from them of what they want to see happen, and make sure that their voice is heard in the process, because it's, you know, the state or the city versus the offender. The victim of the crime is really just a witness to what occurred. And so I just want to make sure that their rights are upheld, as little rights as they have, and that their voices are heard.
Great. So if you're a friend or you're a family member, just, you know, a loved one who's experienced abuse or is abusing, is there ever, would you say is the best time for you to sort of step in and point people to these resources? Or I think there's a lot of fear about worrying that the person will be isolated. They'll be further isolated if they get angry with you for trying to help or trying to reach out to them. And is there ever a good time? Is there earlier better, or, you know? Yeah.
I would say just what really feels right to you. I mean, if you're concerned about a family or a friend, if you're concerned, speak up. And like it's already been mentioned a few times, it's important to, you know, provide the support, listen, believe, try not to be judgmental, even though I know it can be confusing and maybe you don't understand why they've made the choices that they have, but and it's okay to, you know, let your friend know that you're concerned about their safety, you know, let them know that you're available whenever they're ready to talk. Yeah, I just think keeping that door open all the time can provide them what they need at that time. So yeah, for me, I didn't say there's a certain time, just whenever you feel that you're worried about their safety, and it's okay to say that, even though that can be scary, but it's okay to say it. And I think that when that is said, I think that a person in an unhealthy relationship appreciates that and knows that, you know, you have their back and that you are available for them.
Just know that oftentimes it's minimized what happens. It's minimized by the person who's doing the abuse, and it's also minimized by the person experiencing the abuse, because it's hard for them to reconcile the fact that someone supposed to love them and care about them is actually hurting them. And there's a lot of shame that goes on with it. So I would say to you, if someone is coming to you and talking to you about it, it's big. It's happening. It's real, because there is so much shame. A lot of them don't talk about it at all. It's very secretive. It's very hidden. If they're coming to you and talking to you, definitely have the conversation with them. And I would say, never bash the abuser. What it forces the person being abused to do is then defend them against you. And then the abuser, because one of the biggest issues is isolation, will start to say, you don't like them, you don't want them, you know, to be your partner, and that they're coming between you, and start to isolate you as the one support person for the person who's being harmed. And so try never to do that bashing, but always just say, I'm here for you. I'll be I'll be support if you want to talk, whatever, I'm there for you. And let them really run the show, because then they'll share more with you, with less shame.
Yeah, and to, you know, always go that safety angle, you know, that's always a good opening, you know, I'm concerned about your safety. And to just, you know, you don't ever have to say anything negative about their partner. All you have to do is say, you know, you deserve to be treated well. You know, you deserve, and you can name the things. If you see something specific that is happening that you think is unhealthy, then you can say, you know, you deserve to be treated in this specific way. Because you really will alienate them if you start saying negative things about their partner, you know, because again, it's a big part of it is the shame and the embarrassment.
And never go beyond where you feel unsafe.
Right.
Because there have been, situations where people who got involved in a serious domestic violence ended up harmed or even dead.
On sort of that note, for people coming forward and talking to their loved ones, is there any, before people decide to come forward, is there any sort of early signs of that people might be able to recognize that something isn't right, whether it's on noticing, signs on the part of someone abusing or signs on the part of someone who might have an abusive partner? Is there anything early on to just kind of keep a lookout for?
Oh, there's a million of them, actually, but, I mean, some that you may not think about is just, you may think, oh, isn't that nice? And I'm going to refer to it as male and female, just because more survivors are female as opposed to male. But, isn't it great that he's driving her around all the time, and he always comes and picks her up after work, and he's usually there 15 minutes early waiting for her, and he drives her to get her hair cut, and, he takes her to the store, he goes everywhere with her. Isn't that great? And it's like, that's a huge red flag, because it basically means he doesn't want to leave her alone, he doesn't trust her, he wants to know where she is at every moment, who she's with, who she's talking to, and what she's doing. And sometimes some of those things that just by themselves, one component can seem like, oh, what a great guy, when really when you add them up with all the other things, it's like just a really big red flag.
Yeah, I was, the question of what is a healthy relationship was on the sheet. And that's really tough to actually say, what is a healthy relationship? So I went to the person who actually teaches in the school in our office and asked them, because she teaches about healthy relationships to young children and high school students. And she said that she just basically has narrowed it down to 4 questions. The first question is, are you having fun in the relationship that you're having? Can you say no in the relationship you're having? Can you be yourself? And are you good to others? And she uses those 4 questions because we can talk about, trust and all of those things, but that's kind of ambiguous. But I really like those 4 questions because it does cover all the things that, questions you can ask if someone's saying, is this a healthy relationship?
Those are so good.
It's from Power Up Speaker.
Is that?
Drew, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I would just say, I think noticing behavior changes in your friends. So if somebody's starting to act differently, maybe isolating more, their behavior's really starting to change. Maybe they're changing the way they're dressing, the way they feel about themselves, so, their self-esteem, starting to feel anxious a lot. Those can be some really early warning signs, to just kind of check in with your friend about and just say, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And kind of open that conversation.
Great. Drew, you were talking about doing bystander training previously, so I just wanted to know if you wanted to share anything about just any tips or resources about that, being a bystander and noticing that something isn't right.
Yeah. So I think, again, just depending on the situation, how we intervene can really be different, right? So sometimes, like, if you live in maybe an apartment complex and you hear a domestic violence situation, call 911, right? Make sure that person can get help. Sometimes too, like as a neighbor, and if you kind of are friends with a neighbor and maybe they're in a domestic violence situation, you might come up with a safety word that they could either say or text you so that call the cops. So that could be some ideas. Also, just being a good first responder. So, like the other panelists talked about, when somebody does have the courage to come and talk to you, of course, we always want to have a really good response when someone comes to us. So really staying out of that judgment zone, right? And that you're just there to support this person and to really listen to them. And, and I also think, avoiding offering advice, which can be hard, right? So, some suggestions around that might be, what things have you thought about? What things have worked for you in this situation, what things haven't worked, so that the person can really kind of then, of course, be the expert, right? And share what's worked for them, what hasn't worked. And they'll let you know if they really do want your advice. They'll say, I'd really like to know what you think about this. I need to know more about resources. And then at that point, maybe you can be more specific. Also you could talk to them about developing a safety plan with you and just kind of talking through different safety plan options, right? So figuring out what things feel safe to them, what little steps they could maybe do that doesn't feel scary or might put them at more danger. So kind of exploring those types of things with them. So those might be just some examples, but I think the main one is, you just want to approach it with just genuine empathy, right? You just want to have that connection with that person, so that no matter what, they know that they can come back to you, and you're that link that they can talk to, and no matter if they leave that relationship that day or they can't, that they know that they can keep talking to you and keep maybe developing that plan. And because really it's kind of our jobs to sort of maybe offer that little bit of light, that little bit of hope, that there's a way out, and help them along with that process.
And know about the resources like the CBA and SARC and the YWCA and the crisis line, just so that people understand that if they make that contact, it's confidential, and we are only going to support them. We're not going to give them directions, tell them what they should or shouldn't do, and that if they even contact CBA, it doesn't mean law enforcement needs to be involved. That's entirely a survivor's choice, and we're not going to tell them one way or the other, you should or you shouldn't do this. So they always have that option to call and just talk to somebody about it and see, just to get some input, just have somebody listen, even if just that first step to call the crisis line.
Yeah, I would just add that the most dangerous time is if a survivor is planning on leaving, because it is a power and control relationship, and when the person is leaving, that's when the abuser feels their power and control is being lost. And so, and also, there's the general societal idea of like, why doesn't she just leave? Well, I can tell you that she can leave all she wants, but he is not going to leave her. And that's where the problem comes in, and the dangerousness comes in. And that's why, we're all about letting them decide, because they have lived in the situation that they're in, and they know best how to survive in that. They have so far, and so to trust that they know what's best. We can make all kinds of suggestions, but they're going to be the expert, like Drew said. I worked with a woman who was in a domestic violence relationship for 31 years. And he ended up going to prison, and I remember he'd been gone for several months, and she'd finally gotten her own apartment, and I ran into her, and she said that she had just realized within that week that I saw her that she could go home from work and put on her sweat clothes and Snuggies and just snuggle into her couch and watch television. She didn't do that in 31 years. She didn't put on her pajamas or anything until it was time to get into bed, because she never knew what she might have to deal with. And that just gives you an idea that they do know how to survive in the situation that they're in. And so to trust that, sometimes it takes a lot to trust that when you see things that are going on, but trust that they know what's best.
Tanya, I wanted to also kind of talk about the crime victim advocacy program, and just because we sort of touched on how, none of us do mandatory reporting, and Montana isn't a mandatory reporting state, and and you talked about a little earlier how your program lets people's voices be heard when they do decide to report. So could you speak a little to that?
You mean specifically to domestic violence?
Yeah.
Well, at the time of an arrest, obviously the energy level is high and trauma has happened and reports are made, but by the next day, the survivor may be recognizing they don't have childcare, their partner's in jail, and has threatened at another time that if they ever went to jail, they come home and kill them, or the partner is the sole financial support, and so they're wanting to change their story by the next day and get the person out of jail and back home and things be normal. They just wanted what was happening in the moment to stop when law enforcement's called. And law enforcement makes an arrest. They have a predominant aggressor, or I think it's predominant aggressor is the law, and so if they don't make an arrest, they have to justify why they didn't. And so basically, I will listen to what's going on and what their needs are, and then try to make that happen for them by getting permission to talk to a prosecutor in order to ask the judge that these be met for the victim. Or talk to them about their safety, that their safety is a concern, and maybe they need housing, in which case I would then refer them to the YWCA for shelter, and safety plan with them about how they're going to keep themselves there, or the offender may need to be held in custody, and so we'll ask for a higher bond in hopes that that will keep them in custody, or that they should be placed on a GPS monitoring with no contact so that they're monitored and they're not allowed to have contact without someone being notified that that's happening, and then law enforcement can make an arrest. There's just a variety of things. One of the things that we do is we get defunct cell phones that really don't have minutes on them anymore. And as long as you keep them charged, they will call 911. And, I will tell a victim just to keep that charged somewhere where you're the only person that knows it's there. Because I can tell you in domestic violence, there's a lot of phone death. Phones get broken all the time. And so that's usually one of the first things that goes, because that is a line for help. And so keeping a defunct cell phone in a closet, as long as it's charged and they know it's there, they have an alternative to getting help. Other safety planning in cases where they're afraid the offender is going to come back is, move the butcher block from where it's sat for the last 10 years. Or get the locks changed on the doors. Or wasp and hornet spray. Great, shoots about 20 feet in a straight line, and the person who ends up getting hit by it has to go to the hospital to be decontaminated. It's better than pepper spray, because pepper spray can back spray, and then you have someone who's affected by the pepper spray trying to get away from an offender. So, those are little safety plan things that we definitely do. I'll talk to them about whether an order of protection is right for them. But basically, and then there's the court process, and so someone may have to testify, so I help get them ready for that. If they have to go meet with a detective, I'll go as a support system. And I will go to trial with them and sit with them and be there with them if that's what they need. I also will help them with victim impact statements. Once there's a conviction, they have a right to that. They have a right to be notified of all court appearances that an offender is going to be at. I try to make sure they're notified of all of that. I will help them with their victim impact statements. Sometimes the prosecutor will negotiate a plea agreement that the victim is not happy with and wants something else. I will help them to make sure that the judge knows what they want versus what the prosecutor is recommending in a plea agreement. Yeah.
Great. So just a whole bunch of also all the legal stuff that could otherwise overwhelm someone.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a foreign language unless you're a criminal.
Right.
Because, people will confess to law enforcement and then go in and plead not guilty. And someone who's a victim of that is like, what?
So I did want to ask this question, even though, our organizations primarily serve survivors and victims, but is there at any point where it's okay to approach someone that you suspect might be abusing their partner or has maybe controlling behavior that you're worried about, and maybe how would you go about approaching that person and having that conversation? Just if you have anything to speak to that.
You mean if you see that someone is
Yeah, if it's
hurting
just-
someone else?
Mm-hmm.
I would say it has, you want to have a close relationship with them in order to actually have that conversation. Because I don't know that you want to do that with someone that you don't know very well. You don't know how they'll react. And again, I say always keep yourself safe first. If it's an unsafe situation, call 911. Let them weed it out. But you can certainly start a conversation if you're close to someone and say, seems to me there's some weird stuff going on here. What's going on? And again, probably just like you would with the abused person, just try to get to what's happening.
One of the things we talk about in a lot of our trainings is, if your friend is saying, maybe sexist remarks or racist remarks or hurtful remarks against another group, is, saying, hey, I don't agree with that at all, and this is why I don't agree with that. And so kind of taking a stand. And what research has shown actually in a lot of bystander intervention is that if you role model, especially if it's a close friend of yours, or it's a group of friends and the majority of the group is like, that's not okay. We don't agree with what you just said, and here's why we don't agree with that. It can really help to change somebody's behavior because it lets them know that's not acceptable. And also then I think starts to educate them as well. It's like, oh, okay, I can't say that here. And, and so being empowered to do some of that role modeling when you hear your friends or close relatives saying, that might be saying hurtful things about someone else or another group can be really powerful.
Anything to add or?
No, I think
No.
just, like Tanya said, safety first, you would need to have a really close relationship with somebody. I think if you thought that they were the abuser in an unhealthy relationship, to approach them and have that conversation. Abusive behavior is learned behavior, so the odds that you're going to be able to have a conversation with them and it's going to change any of that behavior is not very likely. Not that you shouldn't support them if you have somebody that's in that situation, but consider maybe finding them resources or sharing information with them about healthy relationships. But again, it would need to be somebody that you had a close relationship with.
So I have one more question, and then I was going to open up the room for questions. But I just kind of wanted to ask about ways that we can talk more openly about domestic violence and sort of address the shame and embarrassment that is surrounding that idea, and that victims feel or survivors feel when they're in that situation.
One thing for us, like at the shelter, is that we'll have a lot of women who will come in and they will tell us that, you know, they aren't good at this, they're not good parents, and they will have a list of all the things that they've failed at and all the things that they aren't capable of. And we'll sometimes start with just a very basic exercise, and we will say, okay, what does your day look like? How does it start out in the morning? What do you do at lunch? What does your evening look like? What does it look like with the kids after school? And by the time we get to the evening, when they're ready to put their kids to bed, we can look back and show them, here are the 77 things that you do every day that you are in control, you are capable, you do have value, you are successful, you are managing all the things that you have to manage. They've been so beat down and their self-esteem is so low that it's really hard for them to recognize everything that they do every day that is successful. And so sometimes that's a really basic exercise that you can start with a friend. Well, let's talk about, what does your day look like? And as it turns out, then they can look back and they can say, wow, I do that. I get my kids up, I get them off to school, I clean the house, I pay the bills, I go to work, I do the laundry, I help to my neighbor, I call my mom. I mean, there's all these things that they do every single day that they just don't recognize as having value. And sometimes that's a good place to start.
Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask our panelists?
How would you suggest maybe approaching a situation where somebody says, and I'm sure this is very common, but somebody says, it was just the one time. I know it's not going to happen again, you know? And how do we as friends and loved ones help them not to have that happen again, you know, without being the person giving all the advice and judging?
I would say, well, you know, you may be right, but what if? What if it were to happen again? What would you do? And it gets them talking without, you know, it's kind of like fantasizing almost, rather than this has happened. Because I get all the time, oh, you know, he was drunk. That's why he did it. Mm-hmm. And, you know, just so you know, the training that I've had, I was at a domestic violence training with a probation officer who asked the group, okay, so how much alcohol would it take for you to French kiss your grandmother? I'm like, there isn't enough alcohol. So what he was showing us, though, is that the behavior exists, and maybe alcohol lowers the inhibition to commit it. And so, you know, I will say, okay, well, but what if he gets drunk? You know, what would you do then, if he only does it when he drinks? And so it's really just asking questions to get them talking. And if you can get them to a place where you say, well, what if it happened again? You can sort of safety plan, you know, with them on that, because they may open up. They may not. They may say, oh, it never will. And then I would just drop it, but let them know, you know, I'm there for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One of the things that you talked about as a safety plan was the hornet wasp spray, which sounds great. What other things can be in a safety plan?
There's lots of things. I mean, it just depends on what they're saying to you. I recall one safety plan, which I didn't necessarily think was a safety plan, but she was telling me that whenever he gets me into small spaces, he beats the crap out of me. And I said, well, then run for the largest room in the house. I mean, that can be a safety plan. So it's really listening to what they're saying and then responding to that. You know, I threw out a few examples of moving the butcher block, move the furniture around in the house. You know, just change things up. Stay with someone else if you need to feel safe for a while. An order of protection, if they're going to abide by a court order, is a fairly safe thing to do. You know, we don't always recommend orders of protection. We really talk to people because an order of protection might put them in more danger. And so, you know, then it's safety planning on these smaller levels. I know that we've done escape plans, you know, like if they show up, what will you do? And, you know, work out that they have the kids' birth certificates and medical information and are ready to go at the drop of a hat. So safety planning can be a huge range of things. It really just depends on what they're saying to you.
You know, like Drew had mentioned, you know, a text or a certain code name that you come up with.
Right.
You know, so she called you and says, you know, ghost or whatever, like, you know that she's giving you the permission to call 911 for her. Yeah. And then, you know, like having the bag with the gift certificate, or not gift certificates, birth certificates, excuse me, social security numbers, you know, maybe she's willing to just store that at your home, you know, because she knows that it's unsafe if that is found. So those are just some additional things. But to remember too, it's a process, you know, and I'm not sure if the stat is accurate, but I know it was 7 to 8 times before, you know, a person can leave 7 to 8 times before they will leave for good. So think about that too. So just in regards to being that supportive friend or family member and being patient and caring and, you know,
Well, and
listening.
know that the batterer is coming back to them and saying, I am so sorry they're
Yeah.
bringing flowers and they're, you know, it'll never happen again. I'll go get help for myself. I'll go see a therapist. I'll do whatever. Just don't leave me, you know. And victims of domestic violence are not dumb. They're hopeful. They're hopeful that change will happen. And they love this person. That's why they're involved with them in the first place. And so, you know, they'll try again, wanting to believe, wanting to hope.
You know, and there was a woman who came to the shelter over a period of about 5 years. So it was like once every 10 months or so. And each time when she would come to the shelter, she was very quiet. She was didn't seek out a lot of support from the advocates, but she always came and worked on something. And when she came the last time, she had gotten her all the legal information that she needed. And we found out at that point that each time she came to the shelter, she was working on something. Something that she couldn't do when she was with him, something that, you know, she knew that she had to take it really slow, long steps in order to keep herself safe. And by the time she got there the last time, and she had everything that she needed, that she felt she needed to be able to make that break, and then she was ready. You know, but we had no idea at the time that, you know, she was working on something specific so that when she went back, then she would come and she would get the next thing taken care of. You know, women that are survivors are incredibly capable and incredibly strong and know what they need in order to be able to survive with their partner and to survive in that situation.
And I think also as a friend or family member to know if you were just, you know, sharing resources that are available in the community, that, you know, it's okay to offer, you know, to call the crisis line with her or come into walk-ins that we offer here and at the other agencies. Come with your friend or family member. You know, that's okay. Just, again, providing that support. And sometimes, you know, victims need more hands-on, everybody's in a different place, but just offer, they may not take you up on it, but again, it's just showing that you're caring and supporting and believing.
Question back here.
Yeah, I get asked all the time how effective are orders of protection, and I was wondering, what would you recommend for a woman whose partner continually violates an order of protection?
Report, report, report.
Yeah.
Even if they become a pain in the ass to law enforcement.
Yeah.
You know, law enforcement's busy. And so, you know, sometimes they won't take them seriously. But I still say report, report, report. Document, document, document. The fact of the matter is that if there's been several violations and the law enforcement finally acts and the person's arrested for violating the order of protection, then a prosecutor can look at it and say, wow, there's 7 violations here. The nice thing about an order of protection, it's what they call a stackable offense. So the first time you violate an order of protection, it's a misdemeanor. The second time you violate, it's a misdemeanor. But the third time, it's a felony. And they will charge the person with all 7 violations at that time. And so you have 2 misdemeanors, and then you have 5 felony. So the person's looking then at a 10-year prison sentence. So, I mean, that's why I say, call, call, call. Because stalkers won't stop. I mean, a court order doesn't apply to them.
What, I have a question. What about not the person that comes to somebody and saying, you know, I'm being abused, but that I have relationships with patients, and I've called adult protection services before. And I've been told on more than a few occasions, you gotta be really careful because, you know, if we go out to the home or we make that connection and this person isn't coming forward, you know, let's say it's a woman that I suspect is being abused, that they could actually be making the situation worse. And, you know, on the one hand, I think, well, you know, that wouldn't be good, and, you know, obviously that would be dangerous to, but then on the other hand, I'm thinking, well, then how do you kind of get in there, right? You know, maybe the person does want to help, but doesn't know how to ask for it. So can you talk about that? The person that doesn't ask for help, that you suspect. So let's say it's your neighbor, or you know, do you call and report this?
I would just know though. I mean, because I work in the courts, it's not the be-all and end-all answer. A domestic violence charge for the first time, the maximum possible penalty is 1 year in jail. No one ever does that. And the person's probably going to get out within 24 hours of being arrested. If that may put that victim in much more danger. And so, you know, I always caution to say that's not necessarily the best answer. But if you suspect it's going on, I do think that as a bystander, you should call. And then hope that via that, services get involved where we can safety plan with the person and get them to a safer place.
Are you contacted when something like that happens by law enforcement then, or just only by the victim?
I get information from law enforcement when there's been an assaultive offense.
The support group, do you see people who aren't necessarily involved in actual physical violence, but more manipulative, emotional, verbal abuse, those, you know, more serious ends of that, not just the physical? Do you see people that come in and talk about that kind of thing, or is it mostly the physical end?
I think that it's probably more emotional and psychological
It's
and
more
verbal
of that.
abuse than it is physical abuse. You know, most partners don't have to physically assault their partners on a regular basis because they've done all the other types of manipulation to keep them in line and to control them, so that lots of them, don't have to physically assault them that often. And if you ask a lot of victims, they will tell you that, they'd rather be hit because it heals more quickly. That psychological, emotional pushing down, loss of self-esteem, loss of ability to function, to work, to feel confident wherever you are, is much harder to recover from. And at support group, we have a lot of women who have been coming for a fairly long time because it takes a very long time to heal from it.
I brought some of the power and control wheel. I don't know if you've seen them. They're over on the table there. There's the equity wheel, which is the healthy relationship, and then there's the power and control wheel. And a lot of it is psychological abuse, more so than physical.
Yeah, I could just see somebody kind of staying away from services because they think they're not needing it because maybe they haven't been hit or, something's happened, and yet it's bad, in these other ways.
No.
Do you happen to know if there are resources available in like the public school system, not just the university, like for teenagers, or are there classes being held? I don't know why, I'm just kind of concerned.
They're definitely having healthy relationships classes. The city of Missoula has actually a paid position that goes into the schools and talks to classes about healthy relationships.
And there's a great curriculum out there that's called Power Up, Speak Out.
Right,
that,
and she uses that.
Yeah, that it's very basic. It talks about boundaries. It talks about consent. It's a great program to use with your own kids. And you can access a lot of the information online if you just Google Power Up, Speak Out. It was actually, the pilot program was created in Montana. And they've just tweaked it each year, and it just keeps getting better.
What's the name of it again?
Power Up, Speak Out.
I think we have time for one more question. If anyone has one.
All right, you're all got it, right?
One more here.
Oh, I'm curious. So the book that came out, right, the rape story that kind of put Missoula out there with that, any comments about that? I didn't read the book, and I'm just curious if
I thought it was an
maybe
excellent book.
any.
I think everyone should read it.
I am actually in it. I didn't think I was portrayed very well, but, well, yeah, it's okay. I have to say that I appreciate the spotlight being put where it was. Because sexual assault is really a difficult crime, because there's usually only two people involved. And so I think prosecuting them is really tough. But listening and believing and supporting and all of that is good, and we need to take it seriously. And I think there was a time when we weren't taking it as seriously, and I was glad that the spotlight was put there and sort of pushing people to look at the issue and take some action. Anyone else? I mean,
No, I agree. I mean, I don't know if it was the best portrayal, but I absolutely do feel like it was important to have the spotlight. I do think that some really good things can come out of it.
and when Krakauer was here, he basically said that it's not just Missoula, it's any college town. And it's true, if you look at the numbers across other college towns, we are very similar to what happens there. And I'm hoping, that we actually become the pilot. Drew here is very involved. For other schools to use in other college towns.
I appreciated the victims had the opportunity, to tell their story. Yeah.
And it really is, their perspective. I mean, my perspective is my reality. And it was their reality, and no one can tell them that it was any different than it was. And yet they can still feel not believed. And, that's hard.
Does that have to do with that the prosecution was ineffective, that the perpetrator didn't go to jail?
I think it speaks more to our society. So remember that we're all potential jurors, and so educating ourselves on rape myths, understanding trauma response, so what a victim goes through, because it can seem really counterintuitive to a lot of people. They don't understand how trauma works. And so getting educated about what is the trauma response. Rape myths are pervasive in our culture. How we talk about women, in a negative way is pervasive in our culture. And so until, as a society, we can address that, we have our work cut out for us. And, that's a huge initiative that my office at SARC is doing at the university. We're really trying to talk to students about, what rape myths are. When you hear them, how do you address them? Why are they myths? What's the real fact here? And then what does trauma response look like? We have to care about that, right? We have to care that this has such a profound impact on another person's life. It's not trivial. It's, something that really impacts them potentially for the rest of their lives and is really harmful. And so I think, one of the things I would love to see within our community is just getting more engagement in that, more conversation about that. And I think the Missoula book really did shine that light on that, and hopefully parents and peers were having that conversation, about that, and, trying to understand more about these dynamics.
All right, well, thank you, Tanya and Drew, and thanks, Patty and Connie, for being on this panel and answering all the questions. And thanks to you all for coming. This has been like a really nice turnout for tonight. So.
And if you do ever have questions or want to check anything out, please feel free to call us. I put brochures over here. I brought extra business cards if you'd like some. The Y has their brochures, and we're happy to answer questions, even if it's just about a friend or a family member. Maybe walk you through a process or something. Yeah.
Does YWCA and other communities have similar resources, or does it vary a lot from community to community?
It varies, yeah.
So someplace like Lewistown, Montana may not have half what Missoula has.
Right.
But they should have a victim witness person within their either law enforcement or county attorney's office, who should be able to hook them up with a community advocate if that's what's needed. And if they just know that if they are communicating with a victim witness advocate, they need to say that this is confidential. We're separate from, we're an odd program because we're separate from law enforcement and the county attorney's office.
Can I do a little push too? So we have an advocate training that's going to be coming up. It starts in February, on February 20th. And I actually have some applications and schedules back here. So if you're interested in getting more involved and you like to be an advocate, this is especially for the YWCA, but we have people that go through this training from other service providers in Missoula. I would highly recommend attending the training or coming to one of the tours that we have here at the Y. So if you wanna, my name's Rebecca Pettit, and I can contact you more about that if you're interested, so I'll stay here for just a few minutes. Sorry, shameless plug.
No shame.
Yeah, no shame. No shameless plug. Thank you.